Chapter 16. This kind of website surely has to be banned, stated someone from within the class. It must be, those videos from before were all deleted. Only now did I realize that this year, there were quite a few who had awakened to their power. As such, I have a strong feeling that someone from our class could already have been a metahuman. Who do you think it could be? The class monitor? I feel that the class monitor has a decent build. I do think you have the chance. Really? I'll go talk to my parents and instigate them to get a divorce. That way, I'll get some stressful stimulation and perhaps I could awaken to my powers too. You're hopeless. This group of people was going on and on about it the whole day. One moment they would be talking about someone who seemed like he could awaken, and at another moment it was another person who seemed as such. Suddenly, someone asked if whether there was a possibility that Lu Shu would awaken to his powers, and everyone went silent. No one would dare to openly offend another, considering that Lu Shu was in the group. Everyone felt that there was zero chance it could be Lu Shu. Without even considering his qualifications and looking at his physical condition, he definitely did not look like someone who could awaken to his powers. However, the more pressing issue was that other than the sorcerer who was exposed, the others all underwent stressful stimulations before awakening. Since Lu Shu was an orphan, he probably had gone through numerous amount of stressful situations and still did not awaken. How could he possibly have any more chance in the future? It was impossible. Subconsciously, everyone had seemed to unanimously agree with the Golden Foundation's acknowledgement of the metahumans, and that there were indeed people in this world who had supernatural powers. As for them, they were still mostly clueless about all these incidents, unsure how to awaken to their own powers, nor did they know the extent of these awakened powers, and what changes it would bring upon to this world. Thus, they were here blindly discussing the matter, all harboring some form of hope that they could realize their powers one day. As Lu Shu's name was mentioned, everyone had stopped their discussion, more like they could not carry on their discussion. All of a sudden, someone mentioned, Lu Shu has to work every day but still maintains his grades in his class as one of the top 5. How does he manage to do that? This was the changing point of the conversation's topic. Since everyone felt that Lu Shu would not even have a chance even if the whole class had awakened, they had decided to stop discussing the previous topic. With Lu Shu's physical standards, there was no way he would be able to be one of the metahumans, right? Perhaps he has been working really hard at home and could have been burning the midnight oil last night. While you guys were playing, he has been revising all these while, yet another replied the group. Indeed, Lu Shu's grades had always been consistently good, considering he was someone who had always slept during classes. Could he perhaps be one of those rumored people who appeared to be slacking in front of everyone, but was working extremely hard behind the scenes? Lu Shu was pouting as he saw the messages. As he thought of how his class was the largest supplier of his distress points, he decided to send another message. Some may seem very carefree in the forefront, but what you don't know is that deep down, he is actually even more carefree. The class chat went silent again. The many mediocre students who tried their best every day but yet could not match up to Lu Shu's grades started feeling annoyed. Damn you, would you just shut up for once? From Zhou Feng's distress, plus 77. From Lu Yang's distress, plus 81. Within this short period of time, Lu Shu's distress points had gone up by another 500. He planned to use 3,000 of it and still had 800 to spare. Lu Shu felt that the road to riches was dependent on this bunch of adorable classmates of his. However, Lu Shu was not lying. He was always sleeping during the day's classes as he had stayed up late the previous night, never for the sake of studying but rather, watching the television and catching up on the drama series together with Lu Xiaoyu. The reason that his grades were good was that he had an above-average intelligence and he had to admit that such people do exist in this world. Obtaining grades was one way to guarantee a future for him, but if he were to reconsider his future plans, Lu Shu sort of guessed that he needed to put in more effort into practicing his abilities. He wanted to find out the speed of his ability without relying on the effects of the celestial fruit. Then he would have to sing that lame old lullaby. Lu Shu tried singing it without following the original lyrics, and as expected, there was no effect at all. So you mean to tell me that it would not work even if I sang one word incorrectly? What if he was tone deaf? Wouldn't he be screwed? You can't possibly be discriminating against these tone-deaf people, right? Of course, it did cross his mind that due to its rhythmic lyrics and tune, on top of his spiritual recovery powers, that it was able to exhibit such magical effects. Or was it because of the ashes which had infused itself within him? The tree-like symbol on his palm was initially dull and colored black, but now it had changed to white. Lu Shu raised up his hand and took a look at it. To his surprise, he found out that the once bare tree had unexpectedly 3 new leaves growing on its branches. Was it due to the 3 lighted-up stars in him? Lu Shu sensed that what he had gone through these few days were rather magical, but for him to sing a lullaby in order for him to activate his powers still seemed a bit too awkward, no? Twinkle twinkle little star, how I wonder what you are. Up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. When the blazing sun is gone, when he nothing shines upon. He could not see which way to go if you did not twinkle so. After finishing the lullaby, the distant stars seemed like it had built a connection them and Lu Shu all over again. The radiant starlight which only he could see rained down on him as if it were delicate silver snowflakes descending through the clouds and rooftops. All of it reached Lu Shu in warm waves from every direction as they headed towards and resonated within his heart. If one was to consider the celestial fruit's effect as a gushing current, this current would automatically rush towards the map and gather there. His powers would continue to trickle and Lu Shu needed to guide his powers to flow in a certain direction or it would go all over the place. Although its effects were slow, they were long-lasting. The celestial fruit was not necessarily always available, but its powers were long-lived. Lu Shu calculated the speed of which he could light up the 3rd star on the map and estimated that in about half a month of practicing his powers could he then attain another celestial fruit. He wondered if the speed he could light up the stars was related to his bone structure at all. Having already eaten 2 refresher fruits, what if he was to consume a few more? Lu Shu reckoned this method was worth trying. Everything he knew was just scratching the tip of the iceberg. Lu Shu did not know the rate at which others leveled up their powers, nor did he know what was the most efficient method for him to power up his abilities, and all he could do was to experiment through trial and error. All of a sudden, a daring idea popped into his head: continue on with the lottery, and one day he would reach a point where the refresher fruit would not have any more effect on him. The better his skeletal foundation, the better his physical foundation would be. One day, he would be able to travel further and fast. This simple reasoning was something even Lu Shu could understand. Since there was the existence of the refresher fruit, Lu Shu felt that the more of it he ate, the more it would benefit him. But he still needed distress points. Lu Shu gawked at the class group chat but could not find a suitable opportunity. And so, he disappointedly reopened Message in a Bottle. Chapter 17. Hey, little missy, are you thin? Yep, the other party sent a picture of herself over from the Message in a Bottle feature. Indeed, she was very thin. Wow, you're so thin, replied Lu Shu emotionally. It's not that bad, she replied cheerfully. I can take 10 of you on in a fight, replied Lu Shu. Anonymous? From Lu Ping's Distress, +17. Lu Shu put his phone down as there were no more bottles left for him to pick up and reply. However, he felt that he still had more in him. Looking at his distress points again, it had risen up from 800 plus to 1020, only increasing by about 200 points. How slow. This routine was not the most effective per se, and since it would always be a one-on-one situation, it would be normal for it to not be that efficient. At that moment, Lu Shu sort of missed his classmates. Never before had he paid so much attention to them. On second thoughts, since he could rake in so much distress points if it were in a group, when school starts, what sort of a place would that be? He would be practically invincible. Lu Shu could care less about friendship and all those other rubbish, not like he had any of those from the start. If only all of his classmates could be morphed into Lu Xiaoyu and contribute to his distress points every day. Who could have thought that there was already a meta-human who was scheming against them while they were still dreaming of realizing their powers? Lu Shu decided to utilize all of this 10-20 points to enter the lottery spin. With the refresher fruit in mind as his main objective, any other prize would just add on to the surprise. As expected, starting off his lottery spin, the first 3 times he spun the lottery wheel awarded him with the display, "Thank you for participating." Such coincidences. After going through his first 2 lottery experiences, Lu Shu sort of knew what the odds of winning the prizes were. His only fear was that the 1,000 points he invested into this lottery would only award him with a self-strengthening refresher fruit, but even so, it would be worth it. However, all of his attempts so far unbelievably turned out as, "Thank you for participating." Lu Shu was stunned. How wicked can this system be? After 9 tries and all of it was, "Thank you for participating, are you even serious?" Lu Shu felt that his heart could not take it anymore, those were all of his assets. Having already redeemed 4 celestial fruits and lighted up 2 of the stars on the map within him, Lu Shu was somewhat content. But the problem was that he had always felt that this over-elaborate system was playing a prank on him. This was his last attempt and Lu Shu heartbrokenly entered the lottery once more. When the wheel had stopped, Lu Shu saw 6 words instead of the 4 words, "Thank you for participating," and just as he was about to heave a sigh of relief, his face instantly turned black the moment he read what was written. "Nevertheless, we thank you for participating." Lu Shu almost wanted to smash the pillow right beside him. Just put, "Thank you for participating." If I did not win anything, why go to the extent of adding those 2 extra words? It was as if someone was asking if it was unexpected or shocking. "So you think you're very funny? Whose leg are you trying to pull? Who are you trying to kid?" Lu Shu suddenly realized that this system had some serious issues. He was extremely annoyed and frustrated as he once had so much confidence in his odds of winning something from the lottery, but with just 20 points left, there was nothing else he could do. Lu Shu was so heartbroken and wanted to go back to the message in a bottle to continue to terrorize others. However, he was all out of daily chances to pick up more messages. He went onto the web and went to the Golden Foundation's webpage, intending to research more on others' powers. Lu Shu was just testing out his luck as he accessed the web page since he did not know whether the site had already been taken down or not. Much to his surprise, even after so long, the web page still existed as if there was nothing wrong. Could it be that the internet police had not reacted to it yet? But this should not be the case. Lu Shu had observed that this web page had come up in every of his chat group's discussion and it had already reached the stage whereby it had developed into common knowledge for the public. Or perhaps the Golden Foundation had governmental backing right from the start. The change was too drastic. Initially, they were secretly capturing these metahumans, but now they just seemed to be publicly hunting them down. Even the media had not made any reports about this, and it's as if they had collectively decided to keep quiet. The forums were all bursting with such discussions, and everyone had initially felt that after all, it was just a conversation topic. At most, their posts would be deleted and the government officials would come to remove them, but in the end, their posts were surprisingly left untouched. All at once, the situation had turned into one where no one would confirm nor deny anything about this affair on supernatural powers, and Lu Shu sensed that there was surely a twist in this matter. If the Golden Foundation was really operated by the government, then they would definitely be plotting something behind the scenes, right? However, this was not the only thing which took a spot in Lu Shu's heart. The other pressing issue which troubled him was, it was time to go to school. How could he juggle these 3 assignments, superpowers, and supporting the family all at once? Although just thinking about it caused him headaches, having to go to school meant that he was going to meet that bunch of classmates very soon who would contribute to his cause. He just could not wait. Lu Shu was pondering about all these as he slowly fell into slumber. As for remaining days left, Lu Shu had been observing the webpage called the Golden Foundation, hoping to find out whether it would be taken down. But what shocked Lu Shu was that it hasn't been shut down. This was not something only Lu Shu had noticed, but something everyone else did. Based on the videos from before, although it was considered to be related to the metahumans, there was no other source which had brought up the concept of these metahumans as clearly as the Golden Foundation. Not only did they clearly brought up this concept, they had even scrutinized and differentiated their powers according to grades. Even up to this extent, the website was functioning just fine. This series of events instantly aroused the excitement of many, and within one night, the entire population of China had started to discuss the metahumans. Everyone was unsure if this was the intent of the government since they had initially taken some preventive measure towards this issue, and God knows what else. And of course, the most riled up were the youths, and even the middle-aged aunties and uncles were not spared from the excitement. What meaning would becoming a metahuman hold? It would definitely mean that their ordinary lives would be drastically different from the rest. On the 7th day of the new year, when Lu Shu went to the market, he had overheard two middle-aged ladies, "Oh my, I think your kid could become a metahuman. One look and I know he has the qualities to be one. You kid, that's impossible. Right now, all he should do is to focus on his studies," as the other lady replied demurely even though she was jovial deep down. From the conversation Lu Shu overheard, he could infer two conflicting ideas which everyone harbored towards the metahumans. On one hand, everyone acknowledged that it was great to have a supernatural ability and they would be able to make a name for themselves in the future. Could they perform their abilities to others and earn some money for themselves? This was the most simplistic logic the commoners had, as who would reject any money-earning opportunity? On the other hand, even though having these powers was an upside, education had to be maintained. One of the ladies spotted Lu Shu, and since they were somewhat acquainted, "Hey, Shu, have you awakened?" Even for the middle-aged ladies, the metahumans had become as good of a conversation topic as their groceries. Lu Shu saw the sky slowly dimming, and during the winter, the sunset seemed like a fire in the clear skies after it had snowed. Finally, it was time to go to school soon. Chapter 18. On the morning of the 8th day of the new year, Lu Shu was already awake. He started to get busy in the kitchen from 6 a.m. onwards and was only done around 7 a.m. Carrying a pile of stuff, Lu Shu headed out to school. Just before he left, he instructed Lu Xiaoyu, "There's food on the table, finish it quickly before going back to bed. Revise those textbooks I gave you and I will check on you when I get back home tonight. If I find out that you've been running around, I will send you back to Fuli Orphanage, you hear me?" Lu Xiaoyu was sprawled out on the bed, holding on to her blanket, all silent. Lu Shu asked once again, "You hear me?" "I heard you. I'll get up and eat it later," as she reluctantly replied. "It will be cold later, wake up right now." Lu Xiaoyu angrily sprung up and sat up on the bed. From Lu Xiaoyu's distress, plus 299. Lu Shu's eyes sparkled, so waking this little girl up every day would award him with so much distress points? Would this mean that he would make it big? The two of them only had each other to rely on, and Lu Shu always felt that he had to assume some responsibility for disciplining her. He was worried that this little girl would pick up a lot of bad habits in the future. But from the look of it, other than being a glutton, she did not seem to have any other bad habits. The reason that Lu Shu went to school early in the morning was so that he could earn some money. The school which he studied in from was just one street across from the apartment he was living in. He had his entire education in this school, from the primary school, secondary school to high school. It was called Luocheng International School. Every morning, Lu Shu would push out his cart to sell cooked eggs. Upon being immersed in boiling water, an egg would be cooked entirely within 10 minutes, but if it were to be taken out in 8 minutes, the yolk would be runny. Once cooked, the eggs would have to be placed immediately in ice, cold water so that it would be easier to deshell and the texture would be better. Lu Shu was very particular about the eggs he sold. Pairing the eggs with the condiments he had chosen, it was surprisingly delicious. The ingredients he used to make his sauce were nothing special. On a small dish, he mixed soy sauce and vinegar equally together with a few drops of sesame oil. Last year, when he first started pushing his cart outside of the school, only the primary school students would try them out. With an egg costing only $1.50, it was not very expensive and these kids could afford them. Lu Shu could earn several dozens of dollars each day and it was considered barely enough to support the family. After a while, everyone had known that the eggs he sold were delicious and on their way to the coffee shop, they would buy 1 or 2 eggs from him. There were also some who knew of Lu Shu's circumstances and had intentionally bought some to help him out. As of now, quite a few people in the area knew of the existence of an orphan who was trying to earn his own tuition fees. Truth to be told, there were quite a few kind-hearted people out there in this world, which was why Lu Shu's business was doing rather fine. Since today was the 8th day of the new year, a lot of adults had to go back to work. They would go out to the streets to get breakfast, and since this was the area where all the coffee shops had gathered, the town council had decided not to manage this area. After selling all of his food, Lu Shu would be able to rush to school. In some cases where he could sell out earlier, he could even push the cart home before heading to school since it would be weird bringing this cart along with him to school. Of course, at times where he could not make the timing, there was nothing he could do about it. Most of the students passing by this street were basically his schoolmates, and that was one of the reasons why they had stopped shouting out his name. Rising up the grades was something one could decide on paper from the start as to who would be grouped together, with who, and they could all gather together. The wealthy could be put together and there was no way you could join in the fun. Perhaps the daily expenses of these billionaires could amount up to millions. This knowledge was something which comforted Lu Shu. The teenagers in this current age all like to go to karaoke or the theme park together, costing them a few $100s or even thousands. Lu Shu was unwilling to spend his money now and would experience these fun places if he had more money in the future. But for now, he understood the concept of suppressing his urges to enjoy life. Lu Shu had always felt that the words, "enjoy later," was a great phrase to live by. When his schoolmates first saw him selling eggs on the roadside, they all thought that it was rather unusual. However, Lu Shu did not feel any pressure from them as earning his own money to support himself was not something to be ashamed of. Finally, the only ones who felt awkward were his schoolmates. Upon passing by, they would pretend that they could not see him as they felt that neither greeting him nor ignoring him seemed to be appropriate. As such, their option was choosing to pretend to not see him. Thus, Lu Shu was slowly sidelined. This was the reason why when everyone was discussing who seemed the most probable to become a metahuman, everyone's name was mentioned except Lu Shu. In front of Lu Shu was a pot which was filled with the eggs he had just cooked and a small foldable table. On top of the table were small dishes, vinegar, sesame oil, and beside the table was a small bench made of plastic. The customers could either eat here or they could have them as takeaway. "Shu, it's so early in the morning and you're selling eggs," as a middle-aged lady walked past smiling. "Give me 2 eggs. I'll have it takeaway for my son. He still hasn't woken up, if only he could be as hardworking as you." "All right, 2 eggs it is." Lu Shu tore off a plastic bag and placed 2 eggs into it for the lady. $3 please. 1 egg cost $1.50. On average he would earn about $50 a day, so he would have $1,500 minimally every month and a little more if his business went well. This was all they had to survive on for Lu Shu and Lu Xiaoyu. However, they could not spend all of it since they had to pay their rent of $500, and bills of $100 as well as his school fees which he had to scrimp and save for. Furthermore, he had to consider Lu Xiaoyu's future tuition fees when she could independently attend school. Truth to be told, Lu Xiaoyu was very mature. Even though she was a glutton, she would rarely ask Lu Shu to buy things for her to eat, and even if he did not buy anything for her, she would not make a big fuss over it. Lu Shu would occasionally buy snacks to please Lu Xiaoyu, and every morning, of all the eggs he cooked, he would leave 2 behind for her which she loved to eat. And whenever Lu Shu was not feeling well, she would slowly keep all of her stuff and carry on the business for him. She was familiar with the process of cooking the eggs as she had observed Lu Shu for so many times from long ago. It could be because of Lu Xiaoyu's small stature and adorable look that people would ask her where Lu Shu was. And upon mentioning that Lu Shu had fallen ill and she had to sell these eggs all alone, those dozens of eggs would all be sold out within minutes. Both of them looked similar to the snowmen they had built in the courtyard. One big and one small, they were relying on each other's warmth to survive this cold and cruel world. For Lu Shu, it was very lonely being alone, too lonely. Such that when you had wanted to speak, there was no one beside to hear you. Thus, when Lu Xiaoyu sneaked out of Fuli orphanage to be with him, he felt warm and comforted. As for Lu Xiaoyu, Lu Shu was the only one who was concerned about her future, whether she had eaten properly or not, and had always felt that tagging along with Lu Shu would make her life rather meaningful. These two from rough backgrounds did not feel that they had suffered much deep down. This was the very foundation fueling them to continue living on in this world. At times, Lu Shu would think that it was fine this way as well, without any parents, they could still get by pretty well. In the future, if he were to win an ability from the lottery, he would pass it on to Lu Xiaoyu so that both of them can continue to be partners. Chapter 19. When Lu Shu had sold almost half his eggs, an old lady and a child came by. It was winter break and the grandma must have brought the child out for breakfast. The child wanted to eat eggs and his grandma brought him to Lu Shu's stall. "You've already eaten your breakfast. After this egg, let's go home to finish your homework." Okay, the little kid nodded. As soon as he finished one, the kid wanted more of the delicious eggs, but grandma was not happy. It was unhealthy for kids at this age to be eating too much. "Please Granny, eating more will help me awaken," the kid argued. Lu Shu was surprised to see such a young kid talk about awakening. Just how much influence does this Golden Foundation's website have? Grandma did not seem surprised and attempted to convince the kid eating too much will make you fat and stop you from awakening. Lu Shu could not help but ask, "Little fella, why do you want to awaken?" "I want to fight for world peace," the kid replied with a serious look. "Protecting world peace, Lu Shu said sarcastically, "that's really ambitious." In reality, most boys turned out just like this from watching too many cartoons. But Lu Shu did not have this opportunity as the only television in Fuli orphanage was always playing the channel the dean liked. "Big brother, if you were to awaken, what will you do?" the kid asked. Lu Shu was stunned. This question was something he had never thought about. Lu Shu contemplated and replied, "Probably earn some money first and then travel to the places I want to visit." In school, he had always been jealous of his friends who had parents to bring them out to different places to play. He never did, and in this whole world, he had only been to Luocheng. Curiously, the kid probed, "What else?" "Then I'll find a quiet place to live in," Lu Shu replied quite seriously as this was his heartfelt words. Thinking about it, watching TV shows and spending every day messing around with Lu Xiaoyu without any woes or worries was quite meaningful. So unambitious. A person like you won't be able to awaken. From the kid's perspective, he already had an upper hand over Lu Shu with regards to their ambitions. Lu Shu had enough. "Have you finished your homework? If not, quickly follow your grandma back and do so." He then told the old lady, "Nowadays you can buy homework answers outside, so it's better to watch over the kid, or else he won't benefit as much from his homework." The old lady was surprised, "There's such a thing?" The little kid was confused and shocked. Somehow Lu Shu had gotten him into deep *T. From Yuli's distress, +90. In the end, the kid did not get his second egg and hurried home with his grandma to complete his homework. In the meantime, Lu Shu saw a group of his classmates walking past the street, but they did not even acknowledge him, as though he was a stranger to them. This distant relationship with them was just nice as there were no feelings of stress or burden. It was the first day the adults had gone back to work after New Year's holiday, which gave Lu Shu prosperous business. And the distance to class takes about 20 minutes, which gave him more than enough time to go home to put down his stuff and walk back to school. Back then, he had rented this house because of how convenient it was. As he returned home, Lu Shu made sure that Lu Xiaoyu had finished the food on the table before he packed his things to get ready for school. He was looking forward to seeing how the people in school were reacting to the incident on the Golden Foundation's website. Even on the roads, he could hear chatter about the awakening incident. Some were just envious and jealous, whereas others were speculating about specific and in-depth methods on how to awaken. These speculations, generally about awakening and related topics, were purely based on the videos found on the Golden Foundation's website. But most of the methods mentioned included receiving some sort of shock that resulted in awakening. It seemed like there was not a better method. A huge commotion was brewing in school, although only grades 11 and 12 had started school at this time of the year. The Golden Foundation's website was never closed down, and they even started a forum for discussion. Everyone started to realize that awakening was very real and happening, which explained such a commotion. Especially to those hot-blooded teenagers who were in this rebellious phase where they yearn for nothing but freedom. The awakening was something they all dreamt of achieving. Awakening meant that they can finally escape the control of their families. They were not mature enough to have any clue what they wanted to do after they had really escaped from their homes. To them, the awakening was just really cool and something to show off. As Lu Shu walked on, he suddenly had a thought: can I practice using the map in the day? Although the stars were only visible at night, it was a modern knowledge that they were just other galaxies in the space. Not being able to see them in the day did not mean that they were not there. Lu Shu sneaked into an uncrowded place and sang "Twinkle Twinkle Little Stars" softly. Indeed, he suddenly felt the map within him start to conform with the sky. But this time there were no falling stars, only a ray of sunlight which penetrated his body. At the same time, numerous spots of bright lights appeared inside him and started moving towards his heart. Their target was the flame of his heart. That was strange. So using the map in the day had another effect? The appearance of this flame, then obtaining the golden paper, followed by this new method of training his map, all felt closely related. Did all these happen because of his pendant? Lu Shu had always wondered who gave him this pendant and what magical secrets were hidden in it. But he never figured it out. He did not even know who his parents were. Where could he start searching? The flickering white flame did not seem to have changed much, maybe a little more intense. Lu Shu felt that the day training must have its own uses. It was less energy-consuming than the night one, which required him to lead the movement of the stars. At that moment, Lu Shu was being wary of the people around him, but it seemed like no one realized him practicing his powers, and he finally relaxed. For some unknown reason, the abnormalities of his body were very hidden. He was able to detect the waves surrounding Liang Che, a slight amount from the black coats, but no one seemed to be able to detect his. Could it be due to his lack of training? Chapter 20. If he was to say that he was absorbing the powers of the stars, then there would be no reason for others not to notice it. Since those powers were probably not channeled to him through simple means, what exactly were those starlights that he had absorbed? It did not seem to be similar to what others were experiencing. Being the only one with these powers was a huge issue. There was no one you could discuss this with, nor was there anyone who could guide you. It was all up you find out for yourself. But no matter what, it was a good thing to be able to stay hidden. Although the matters with the metahumans seemed to have been publicly announced, Lu Shu was uncertain if those men in black windbreakers would continue to go around capturing people. As he entered the classroom, he was greeted by the presence of his classmates, which he never felt close to at all. For the sophomores, their first day back at Luocheng International School had been flagged off with a mock exam. This was to drag the students back to reality, since they had been running wild for the past half a month of vacation. Wait till they see their results, only then will they feel despair. However, Lu Shu was neither worried about the exams at all, nor was he ever worried about his studies from the start. It was as if this was his compensation from the heavens. Being physically frail from young, he was exceptionally intelligent. During the first exam, which was the language test, there was a huge commotion out at the corridor midway through the test. One student had shouted out loud, "What proof do you have to accuse me of cheating?" It was so loud that the entire building of classes had heard it. This building had 7 floors in total, with the 4th and 5th floor hosting the sophomores, while the 6th and 7th floor hosted the seniors. Lu Shu's classes were on the 5th floor, and climbing the stairs to reach his class would leave him breathless and panting. However, after he had eaten the refresher fruit, it seemed to have cured the weakness within him, and he could now ascend the stairs without much of a problem. Furthermore, after he had lighted up 2 of the stars, his physical abilities were double of an average adult. Even though he still looked thin and fragile, he actually had a lot of strength. The commotion had obviously occurred on the same floor, and Lu Shu was wondering which class was this student from. How brave. Shortly after, everyone heard a loud, resounding noise. It sounded as if a wood-like object had been smashed and shattered into pieces as it fell from a height onto the ground. The commotion at the corridor started to intensify and had become extremely rowdy. Lu Shu's form teacher walked out of the class to take a look, appearing to not care about the exam anymore. The form teacher, Shi Qingyan, immediately had a huge change in expression the moment he exited the class as he rushed across the corridor. At this moment, Lu Shu's sophomore class 3 went crazy. What exactly could have happened that would cause Shi Qingyan to exhibit such an expression? Suddenly, in the corridor outside of the class, Shi Qingyan extorted, "Stop, how dare you raise your hand against a teacher?" There was an uproar within the class as everyone looked blankly at each other. Even Lu Shu was stunned. Who was that daring such that he would beat a teacher up on the first day of school? Being caught cheating was not something very usual, but since this was just an insignificant exam, the school would not give the student any demerit points. However, would hitting a teacher not turn it into something very severe? Someone from the class stuck his head out and took a peek. "Oh damn. Quick, come take a look, forget the exam, every other class is out here looking at this already." As such, everyone ran out to see what exactly had happened, and Lu Shu was no exception. The corridor was filled with bystanders, and sophomore class 3 had come out a little later than everyone else. Clueless, they asked around, and a male student with a perplexed look on his turned around and answered, "Some guy from sophomore class 7 had awakened. He was caught cheating and was able to lift up the rostrum with one hand, flinging it down the building." Metahumans? This word was too shocking. Someone close by had actually awakened to their powers? All these jokes had finally become true, and it occurred just next to him. Someone had remembered what the Golden Foundation had introduced on their site about the metahumans. So this is the strength-type metahuman? I can't even move the rostrum with both my hands. Yeah, I have an old pal in that class, and when I asked him, he confirmed that the guy really did lift up the entire rostrum with one hand. Although it looked like it took a lot of effort, this isn't something a normal human can achieve, and even that guy had claimed to have awakened himself. There's no running away from this matter. Lu Shu was deep in thought. It was not because of his background that he had dared to hit the teacher, but rather, it was due to him being frantic as his powers had just awakened suddenly. Or perhaps, he already had a grudge against this teacher and he felt that he was incredible after becoming one of those fabled metahumans. As such, his mentality had exploded and he could not contain himself. He was probably thinking that since he was already some sort of a superhuman and he had not witnessed Liang Che getting captured, just like Lu Shu did, he felt that he did not need to go to school anymore and he could go out to protect the peace and order of the world. This was similar as to when a beggar was to be given a large sum of riches, exploding with emotions and going out of control. Lu Shu had also realized that these pure strength-type metahumans do not feel their own strength fluctuating. Perhaps, their powers only enhance the strength of their bodies conditioned directly. He could not help but feel that maybe these strength-type metahumans would, unfortunately, be useless in the future? Unless they were able to come out with a few special skills of their own, How would these metahumans who purely relied on their bodily strength stand off against those elemental types? Today's commotion could not be contained, and Lu Shu decided to push his way forward towards the scene. He had wanted to close the distance between them and find out what the strength-type metahumans would look like. At that moment, the rays of the sun shone and converged onto Lu Shu. Not to worry, these sun rays had just become fuel for the fire within his heart. He wanted to find out whether his fellow metahumans would be able to feel the fluctuation occurring within him as well. Lu Shu's strength was now double of an adult as he carefully pushed his way forward. Someone within the squeezy crowd had become annoyed and turned around, angrily staring at Lu Shu and cursed, "How many times do you want to push?" Lu Shu was stunned, just once. This time was the people around him who was stunned. The girls sneered as the boys found it to be music to their ears. Lu Shu did not care much as his main concern currently was to push his way forward to take a look. However, the male student in front of him was genuinely mad and wanted to shove him. Upon lifting his hand up, he saw that Lu Shu had already swiftly placed one hand on his chest. Following that, a huge force originated from that tiny arm as he got unbelievably shoved by Lu Shu. The male student staggered before falling onto the people around him. From Zhang Zhang's distress, +70. The other party had never expected such strength from Lu Shu, which was too much for him to resist, and since it was done with such speed, he was unable to react as he stumbled from his position. However, this amount of strength was not something incomprehensible, and as such, the other party did not think too much about it. When he had finally stood up and was about to give chase, Lu Shu had already vanished into the crowd. Lu Shu was definitely able to push his way through the crowd, but he could not as he sensed something amiss. As he made his way forward, Lu Shu had suddenly felt a fluctuation of power right beside him. He unintentionally turned his head around and had surprisingly found out that this fluctuation of power had come from a female student from the neighboring class. In this one school, including himself, there were 3 metahumans.
What does it mean to be happy? 'Cause it looks like we all don't know. Glass half full or empty, man, we just putting on a show. Try to look to the heavens to tell us things that we better.